Hello, I'm Jim Miller. I'm here with Ron Bowers and Henry House. The Flipside starts right now. Welcome to the show. We're pleased to have with us Councilwoman Shelley McIntyre from the city of Hagerstown. Shelley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to have you on. You're our newest. What are you our newest?
I'm not the newest.
Austin is the newest.
Austin is the newest.
You're one of our newest council people, and I know your term is still very young, so you probably are still getting used to some things. But I guess my first question is, what made you want to apply for that vacancy?
It was really a lot of friends and family support. I was always tired of driving around and saying, oh, this could be better, that could be better, what is the city doing? And I figured that when the opportunity came along for the appointment, I was going to throw my hat in the ring. And it really wasn't me that had this sincere passion to go into politics. It was really a lot of friends and family that knew that I have big ideas and I'm always talking about it, so I may as well take action on it. So That's how.
Great. So you're like their plenipotentiary. You're their representative, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Great.
What's your goals and aspirations? I know you were appointed into midterm, but what's your goals and aspirations? What when you go campaigning for the next term, if you do? Okay, I'm not asking you to commit to it yet. But when you go for the next term, what do you want to use as your staples of accomplishments as a council person?
But by the way, feel free to make any big announcements you'd like to on this show. We're happy to accommodate.
Okay. I actually do plan on running for the next election. So I didn't campaign the last time. It was really difficult sitting in front of those very experienced council people, and it was intimidating. So it was very hard to sit in front of cameras and microphones, and somehow I keep wondering if they picked the wrong person. Like, do they know what they did? So my campaign, I've already accomplished a couple of things. I've already done the Bridge to Change program, which is the homeless outreach, and I've done the Youth Advisory Council. I'm currently working on a violence prevention program that is directed towards the youth. So if I had to guess what my campaign would look like, it would probably be surrounded on youth efforts. So again, I think that things will change. I'm very interested to hear what my constituents and what my neighbors and what the people that I do go door to door have to say. So I'm thinking that it's the youth, but I would love to hear what their feedback is, because I didn't really have that opportunity being appointed. So.
Right. You were kind of a Christmas present to the city of Hagerstown, I think, in 2017, right around Christmas time you were appointed. And back at that time, Kristen Alshire said some positive things about you. He liked the things you said. But he cautioned you that be a public servant, not a politician. Have you found the difference? Have you found a way that you can actually do that?
I was told by Don Bowman, like the second week of my, my position, and he said to me, do not vote based on whether or not you'll be reelected. And I have taken that to heart. Every single time I think about voting, I think about my core values and how I vote. And I really I have learned that there is a difference. I can see where politics get played, not in any certain instance, but I do really, really enjoy representing the people. So I also value what Kristen said by being a public servant.
Do you actually believe you can listen to people and come up with a good program? I think weigh that before you really commit to it, because people will want something, they won't want something. How will you be able to set a course of action in your mind and follow through with it? Still listen to people, because the overwhelming amount of people will be against everything you want to do.
I think that I've learned that it seems like everything new is a no. And I have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens I represent. It is not just Shelley's opinion, it's everyone's opinion. But I've learned that you're not going to make everyone happy, and I really do my best at looking out for what is good for the community and what is good for our citizens and for our staff too. So.
Will that fiduciary responsibility mean now or in the long run to build your budget up so you don't have those constant problems at the end of the for the budget year?
I think that both have to be taken into consideration. I don't think that you can. There's not one without the other. So I think that you have to look at the long term to see what kind of ramifications or what kind of sustainability that you need. So I think that those are very important to I think that both of those aspects have to be weighed.
So you mentioned that you drove around town and thought, gee, this could be better, this could be better, this could be better. How closely did you follow city politics prior to your election?
Not at all.
Really?
For the longest time, I thought Kristen was a girl. I mean, isn't that terrible? But I did, and I admitted that to him, so I'm not afraid to say that. So I didn't follow politics at all, not on a national level, not on a local level. I firmly believed, I'm like, they obviously don't know what they're doing here at the city because this isn't happening and this isn't happening, but boy, was I wrong.
The devil is in the details.
Right. I was so wrong.
How closely do you follow state and national politics today?
You know, it's interesting because I actually am so curious. I'm curious to how people present themselves and what they say and you know how they redirect, and now I'm just intrigued.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is the position what you expected?
It's a lot more reading than I expected. There's a lot of studying. There's a lot of questions that I like to ask prior to the council meetings. I think that, you know, to ask staff so I can make an educated conversation at the council meetings. The amount of emails that are received are just inundating. It's a lot. It's better than I expected, I think.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah, I'm actually really having fun.
You're going to run again.
Yeah, right? I'm really having fun. I mean, there's really challenging parts to it. I mean, it's not easy at all. You know, it's especially running a company at the same time. You know, you have a full-time job, and I really put a lot of hours in. So, but I mean, the good and the fun outweigh the kind of the not so fun part.
Okay, talk about fun. What are some of your highlights? I mean, things you look forward to, whether sitting down at the city council meeting or you mentioned activities protecting youth in our community. What are the big things that kind of excite you? Say, this is the reason I get up, I do this job.
I really like connecting people. So one of the things I like to do if someone has a problem, there was a dog issue, something very basic, and I was able to put them in touch with the right person, and I'm very responsive and get answers to someone as soon as possible, and I follow up. And I really like that satisfaction of satisfying a constituent or a citizen of our community that needs something. So that is very fulfilling for me. I really like going to the events and you know, being the representation. I feel like I'm approachable. I feel like I'm a person that someone can talk to and get results. The couple, you know, the Youth Advisory Council it hasn't started yet, but we had 24 applicants, which is tremendous, and it's just going to be a great thing for the community to watch the youth and how they're able to lay the groundwork for their future community. So I think that's exciting.
As you move forward, have you found that you may be a city council person, but you're going to have to pay a lot of attention to the county?
Yes.
There's a lot of interface. Some that hasn't happened yet, some that should happen before too awful long, and the state as well. How are you going to balance all of that out? Because suddenly being a city council person isn't just being a city council. You've got to know a lot of different issues.
Yes.
Utility issues and all that kind of stuff. How have you found that? How are you going to balance that out? Because that's an added job, so to speak, that maybe you didn't bargain for.
More reading.
Yes, that I really wasn't, that's probably what I wasn't prepared for, is how many other layers there are. And the way that, I mean, we're so fortunate on this council, I think that it's a really good core group. Having Lou and Kristen with their tenure and their experience, I think that it balances out, you know, with Emily and mine and Austin's kind of naivete, I suppose. And I can rely on Kristen for many different, I guess, a lot of history. So that makes it easier for me to understand and digest. But balancing it all, we are starting to have the 2x2s again with the county. We've had one. I'd like to see more. And the tough conversations that need to take place so we can all be on the same page.
Toughest issue you're facing right today?
Fire and EMS.
Even at the city level?
Fire and EMS.
Wow, that's surprising.
Can he ever be solved?
I think that there's going to be a pathway
Do
to
you think you'll ever make firemen and EMS people happy?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, I think that there's always going to be someone that's not happy. I think that that's the thing. You can't make everyone happy.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, in fairness, is there an organization, a business or otherwise, where everyone in that organization is happy?
No.
I would say
But
no.
she realizes that. I was hoping that would be your answer, because it's difficult
Yeah.
to pull the volunteers and the professionals together, to pull everybody together. But that's what you see as your number one issue.
I do. I think that that's a big issue. I think that it's costly, you know, for the city to staff their own fire and EMS. So it makes it challenging. For us. So if again we have to have the conversation with the county, there's a lot of issues. There's some cracked foundation. So yeah.
Okay. So we have a lot more questions. If you don't mind, we might keep you around for another segment or two.
Sounds good.
Stay with us. The Councilwoman and Flipside will be back in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back. So we talked a little bit about the Councilwoman. Now let's talk about another topic with regard to the city of Hagerstown. And I'm going to call this section A City with Some Cynics.
Okay.
You know, when I want a good laugh, I get on social media. And there's several groups related to Hagerstown, and none of them that I've seen, at least not the ones that aren't sponsored by the city, are necessarily always positive. How do you, and frankly, even expanding that, even the media, I saw a headline after the Washington County bike race from WDVM that read, "Streets blocked for tour of Washington County." Shouldn't that have been, on the positive side, shouldn't that more likely have been, Hagerstown draws 250 cyclists from around the nation for annual bike race? I mean, can't we phrase things, and how do you combat that?
I actually did a recent Facebook detox. I took 30 days because it can feel defeating.
It's maddening.
It can, and
the problem is there are people that look at that and believe it. They take it as fact.
Absolutely. I go back, this doesn't have anything to do with the headlines, but I recently went to a sociology class and talked to the sociology students there. So they're 18, 19, 20 years old, right? And the question that we asked them was, why don't they go downtown? You know what they said? Crime.
Right.
How do they know, other than their parents or whatever? So they're not on Facebook, you know, the age group isn't on Facebook, but so this negativity, just like you say, so no matter where it comes from, is just, you know, just manifests and is really unfortunate, and it's hard to deal with. It's not, a lot of times though we kind of giggle, and I've got the mayor to, you know, talk back to people. So
oh yes, you do.
Yeah, I don't
that is
really.
Also sometimes maddening, and I love Bob, but
I think it might be my age too that I just don't get into. I just don't like that form of communication. So if I do see something, I'll actually reach out and private message them, and you know, ask them to sit down with me, or you know, kind of just. I just don't think that it's fair to have any kind of battle. That's just not my style.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
It's just not my style.
Because if you chime in as the city council person, I think you invite more.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's better just to let that stuff die. What are your thoughts, Ron? social media and a city with some cynics?
I watch constantly people from Florida that used to live here commenting. I saw a guy the other day was all upset because he couldn't get through it's time to stop shutting South Potomac Street down to build two $40 million facilities. And he wasn't even from in town. And when you deal with those folks, it makes it, you can't deal with those folks unless, and I like what you're doing, you instant message them, give them the time of day, and you won't be shocked how many of those folks you can turn around.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other benefit of that, and I want to reinforce what Ron said. I think the instant messaging, and it may leave it open for others to interpret their own way. But if you cut off the source, and I do believe an instant message is much more valuable to somebody on Facebook, and they take it differently. And I've done the same thing. There was a situation where somebody was attacking a local teacher that I had a lot of respect for, and in an instant message, I responded to their Facebook and I said, "Hey, can't support you on this, here's why." And that person was actually honest enough to say, "Hey, here's an alternate theory of this, and I respect Jim, and here's what he said, so maybe I'm wrong."
Yeah.
And you know that doesn't always happen, but I think you gain respect when you do the private.
Well, and I think that people can easily hide behind their keyboard and their monitors
and the anonymity.
Right, and it's simple to do it that way. So again, that's just my approach, and
I think it's a great approach.
Yeah.
My personal opinion. Henry?
We've seen the articles published in out-of-town newspapers online that are essentially giving a black eye to our community.
Yes.
Okay. We live here. We've grown families here. We know, yes. Do we have problems in downtown? It's no different than on the east end, west end, north or south end. There's crime that happens. It's just what happens in a large city. Okay. And we have negative comments. How do you tackle that as a city council to try to groom the public image? Because, we can flip back 30, 40 years ago. No one wanted to go to Frederick.
right.
Okay? You don't want to be in downtown Frederick. Now, it's kind of a destination place to go. Mm-hmm. How do we tackle that? What can we offer in community sense from a PR and civic opportunities to change the perception of, because it really is perception. It's no different than any other city of similar size. How do you combat that as a city council member or as a person who lives within the city limits?
I think that the way we had a goal setting session not too long ago, the council and with all of the directors, and one of the things that we thought was important is to create a branding message, so where everyone has the same message, because I think that what happens in the city is that there's so many great people that are trying to do the same thing in their silos. Mm-hmm. So if we all came together and had that same branding and had that same positive message, that those kinds of message would eventually be contagious and that we can increase that positivity. I don't hesitate everywhere I go. I talk to people about the great things that are going on, and I just had a meeting yesterday, same idea, and we see what we see on the streets because that's basically all there is. So if you're looking, if you don't want to see a homeless person, or if you don't want to see someone that is unfortunately doing drugs, that's the only thing there, because there's no other traffic typically to cover that up.
Right.
Like there is in every other city. Do you know what I mean? It's like a Photoshop.
And I do. I mean, we had the situation last summer where people started to take up living quarters underneath several railroad bridges.
That's right.
And that's all anyone saw when they drove through town. It didn't matter what was a block to the east and a block to the west. Only thing they saw was, this little city of lawn chairs and sleeping bags.
Right.
And that was Hagerstown. And that's not Hagerstown.
Right. And they also thought that we weren't helping them.
Right.
So that was just a whole...
But you can only help them if they choose to want help.
But you have to have somebody that help, and Goodwill with Brooke Grossman,
right.
Who had experience
right.
with what she was talking about, was able to go in, and I think you're involved in that.
Yes,
in that as well, and how you could work the problem. Have you ever thought about you guys that are freshmen, council people, of going to the Herald Mail and getting the Herald Mail to talk to you about creating a court page in the paper that every time, because every day in the paper, the headlines is somebody's on trial, somebody this trial, somebody did this and somebody did that, that is all court system, and that's all in the paper. That they actually took all of that off and put it on a court page.
Like on the inside.
On the inside, and not make it
Above
the headlines. above the fold. And if you look at the paper, that is what they do.
Well, and they
every
they
day.
also, and I think you probably have experiences. They also will take cases that or crime that is not necessarily in Hagerstown proper, and they will attribute it to Hagerstown. Yeah, a Hagerstown man did this. Okay, well, wait a minute.
But you might be able to get them to remove it and put it on. Why does it have to be on the front page of the paper? It certainly isn't news to whom. To whom? Who's it news to? And it's something that they could do.
That's a good idea.
It should be on the obituary page.
So Baltimore Magazine a year ago published an article, and it called Hagerstown an economic, social, and political vacuum. It talked about that we are in the shape we are in because of poor decisions that were made by any number of elected officials dating back to the 1970s. That same article suggested that one of the biggest mistakes Hagerstown ever made was failing to upgrade Municipal Stadium. From your perspective, and I know that's on the radar again, what are you hearing from council? What are you hearing from your constituency in terms of the pros and cons of building? And I think what I'm hearing is not just a baseball stadium, but a multi-use sports complex.
I think that the consistency on the council is that something needs done, that we're not finished yet, like with Barbara Ingram and the Maryland Theater, like that, and the Plaza. That can't be enough. We can't be finished. So it comes down to what? So I know that all of us do not think that it should be just a baseball stadium. That is not what any of us are thinking. The location is something that is still it's still being considered, and I personally feel as if we have an arts and entertainment district, and should the new multi-use stadium have more arts and entertainment than baseball? Baseball worries me. I don't play baseball. Is it going to go away eventually? Can this be sustainable? Just like I was saying, but when it comes to the constituency, I feel as if they don't understand that it's more than just baseball. Because reviving the Hagerstown Suns is really challenging. It's going to take an owner that comes in and wants to rebrand and market, and I think that people don't trust that if it's a stadium with baseball, that it's going to be successful. And that's worrisome. And you have to have an owner that wants to be a participant, and because minor league baseball is not about baseball, it's about community, and that has to be in the forefront if the multi-purpose complex is going to have anything to do with baseball.
Okay. So we're going to take a break right now and pay some bills. Stay with us after the break. Shelley McIntyre is back for one more segment. Welcome back. We're here again with Shelley McIntyre. Shelley, I think some people expect that there's really nothing the city can't do. And I have two examples, and I'd like for you to comment on both of them. Both of them actually involving Antietam broadband. So the first one was the whole issue of WDVM, and people, I know representatives from WDVM visited the council and made a push to say, hey, get WDVM back on the air on Antietam Cable. The other one was this whole broadband issue, the cyber attack that happened to Antietam Broadband, which was apparently very complex and long-term and very targeted. And the tub thumping from some of the constituents was end the monopoly. So first of all, am I right? Is it not in your purview to end monopoly? And is there anything preventing competition? If somebody wanted to build another broadband network and offer it to Hagerstown, Would the city prevent that in any way?
No, we'd welcome them with open arms if they wanted to invest the infrastructure.
And that's the key, because it is a
Right.
significant investment
Significant.
of infrastructure. You're
Yes.
talking about fiber to potentially every community, every house, or cable, or some other variation of that. What about the WDVM? Equally, do you have any power to say that you must carry WDVM on?
Not at all. Yeah, and I think that, you know, if you really break it down, I think that the citizenship would, you know, the constituents would really not want the government involved in local business. So.
And what surprises me about that is we are very much a center to center right community, and our mantra is keep government out of all parts of our life, yet
Until it makes it uncomfortable. That's right. Until you're uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden,
it's come fix this.
and then it's I need to go to the top in order to get something fixed.
All right, let's talk about some real issues. There are real issues in the city of Hagerstown. Ron, do you have a starting question on that?
I wanted to know, what do you think the biggest asset in the city of Hagerstown is?
Oh gosh, I would say that the biggest asset that we have is probably between the Maryland Theater and the museum. I think that the Maryland Theater isn't it? It's the second largest. Am I right?
Yes.
In the state? I mean, that's a big thing.
Plus the whole Thomas Lamb
Yeah.
thing.
I just think
There's only,
that
what, 16
Same as the
of those?
Hippodrome. Hippodrome was
Right.
2014, 1914, designed by the same person did the Maryland Theater.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's a tremendous asset that, to really market and show off our museum. I think that our arts I think that we speak loudly in the arts, and I don't think that there's enough appreciation for it.
But you're-
BISFA, goodness gracious.
I'm going to add one to you that nobody talks about.
Okay.
It's in the paper all the time. Water. You
Water.
guys control where water goes.
That's right. That's right.
And I think in the next couple of months, you may be talking about where it does go.
Sure
and
does
how
sound like it.
And how how you're using the water out of the Potomac River, how it comes through Washington County, and all at once it's controlled. And the city says, well, we don't want this to grow here, we don't want it to grow there. Is that really the city's decision to do that, since the water is coming out of the Potomac River? I'm not asking you for an issue or for an answer, but what I'm asking is recognize that the most formidable structural asset the city of Hagerstown has is water and sewer.
It's true.
And with that, how they use it depends on their future and how they can build a tax base.
Yes.
That if they did it right, their tax base, they don't have to annex. They've already proven annexing does not improve a tax base.
That's right.
Takes away from a tax base. So
I think you're right. I think that, and we are going to have that conversation very soon. We're talking to the county about the medium range growth area. So, and kind of trying to look at what their plan is and what our plans are. And it's going to be an interesting conversation upcoming.
public,
Public. You want to come?
absolutely.
Me too.
Okay.
Henry?
Okay. You mentioned, the museum
Yes.
and BISFA and Maryland Theater. We have an asset that links those together. What's the potential of growing the
Cultural trail.
Trail?
Yes.
That, we've mentioned the possible stadium multi-use complex. There's other things that can grow along that trail, but wouldn't that be a great economic boom to start to draw in? I'm not asking for comment location on the venue, but to draw in other businesses, because I think that was the anticipation of developing that trail.
From what I understand, I don't know if I agree with the cultural trail being able to encourage economic development. I mean, maybe.
Well, if it draws more people and foot traffic in downtown,
That would be nice.
The logic would be
Yes.
that it would complement the businesses that are present down there.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Would you then consider a walking trail and an Antietam Creek walk from Jefferson Boulevard to Funkstown and open up the Antietam Creek for development, the same as they've done Carroll Creek, and Frederick.
Every city that has water in it is successful, it
And
seems
we've
like.
got water,
Right.
and we have water
It feels like
everywhere.
there's a common theme in the successful cities, so.
And we have it everywhere.
That's right.
And the
Sometimes
Herald-
not where we want to have it. But
So our asset needs to help our economic development. There you go.
There you go. So your culture trail, your assets.
That's right.
Take the water and the Herald Mail. The Herald Mail pumps water out 24 hours a day, 365
That's because there's a
days
stream
year.
underneath there.
Yes.
That's right.
And they have to pump it out.
Yeah.
Bring it to the surface. But there you've got a chance with your trail and your assets.
Yeah.
But that we could give a tour of the catacombs of Hagerstown.
You been in any of them?
Yeah, wouldn't that be an interesting
Yeah.
tour for the city?
I have
I'm
been
sure
in
every city council member's had a tour of the catacombs, along with Allie the alligator
many
from City
years
Park.
ago, I was in.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So one of the things that we hear over and over, and most often from the city council, is the concern about low home ownership rates. And as a landlord in the city of Hagerstown, sometimes I feel like I'm being targeted, and we try to run a good rental property, but other than the landlord piece, which I don't know that it's been, at least in my view, successful at increasing home ownership rates, how does the city go about doing that?
I think that, gosh, that's a hard one. I think that it's really difficult because the buildings that we do have if you're talking about the downtown core, the buildings that we have are very difficult and very expensive to rehab. So that's very challenging based on our code. And I think that it makes it difficult for your typical landlord to come in, and it sounds like a great concept to buy one of the buildings and redevelop it, but it's so incredibly expensive that I think that it makes it very challenging.
It makes it challenging based on the potential rent
Right,
payback.
that's right.
The investment versus return, but arguably, if with BISFA and with USMH and with the Maryland Theater and with some of this other development and hopefully some kind of stadium, that's my view, doesn't that now push up the rents?
That's exactly right. But the way that I look at, that's why I'm saying that we need more, because there already was USMH, there already was a theater, and there already was BISFA. We're just refacing it.
We are.
And so we need just a little bit extra in order to encourage more economic development in order to increase the rates.
Have you ever thought about using Hagerstown Housing Authority and giving them more authority to do something like rehabbing some of the properties that are in town?
We've done that. We've actually sold them some buildings.
But they could actually do more as well.
They could.
They could actually be more involved instead of your city building inspectors or your city inspectors doing it and you setting up all the rules and regulations that when you do upsets everybody, especially if they're slumlords that get all upset. But the housing authority might be an answer to change just building big buildings in downtown Hagerstown to rehabbing existing facilities. You've got enough type of housing in the core.
And we have, there's a really good investment group that is making big strides with their redevelopment, WLR. They're doing some great rehab projects, so, and encouraging some renters at least. So
Let me ask you a question on city employees, okay? Police, fire, we talked about, rescue services earlier. Would there be ever any consideration to give them encouragement, maybe a city property tax reduction if they decide to locate within the city limits?
it's funny that you, I think that they're actually, and I'm not really positive about this, but I do think that there is an incentive for a policeman or emergency services to live within the city limits. I think that there's some kind of, credit of some sort.
Okay.
In other municipalities, it's actually a requirement.
I'm aware of that. That's why I didn't want to mandate something.
No.
But at the same point, if we could get more of our public servants that are within the city limits, again, that gives a perception of being a, quote, safer community. And they're invested in their neighborhoods, and if they're buying houses, they're less likely to pick up and move.
Right.
So just a couple of things before we get into the fun stuff, which is the future. And if we can keep these to 30 seconds or less, because I think we're already over on time, and that's okay. There are budget concerns, obviously, nationally, state. The county just raised the tax rate to the highest level allowed in the state of Maryland. Where is the city financially?
I mean, it's a balanced budget, so that's always a good thing.
That is
but
a good thing. Is there a choice in the city other than a balanced budget?
No, there isn't. I think that it just takes a long time to get to the balanced budget, but it's a challenging budget, which is why we need to talk about the fire and EMS and see where we can have equitable distribution that would help our budget. So I think that increasing the tax base, all these things that you've said, are very helpful. It's just that, it's putting it all together. And another thing that I've always heard that I just realized is the government does move really slow. Yeah. So, but it's a challenging budget.
Your colleague, Emily Keller, has really taken to the whole opioid crisis issue, and she's been a leader, a thought leader, an opinion leader in that fight for several years now. The opioid problem, though, is not unique to Hagerstown. Can we win a battle when all of those around us seem to be losing?
If I had the answer to the opioid problem, I would probably be able to say. I applaud Emily. I'm very proud to work with her in all of her efforts. And I think that with her education and with the things that the entire country is trying to do, I think that hopefully the opioid epidemic will actually fade away. But it's just going to take years.
Something else will come in and totally make the opioid problem think, well, what was that?
Yeah.
Something will replace it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about opportunities. Ron, do you want to start us with that?
You have a lot of opportunities now. You got a lot of water.
I know.
You're ready, I think, to have an agreement to get more capacity into the city sewer plant by diverting some sewer to the Conica-Jig plant. What do you actually want to see? You're a small business owner. Mm-hmm. You work in business, and your business depends on new structures being built.
That's right.
HVAC. What do you see happening? What do you want to happen? How do you? Don't you get excited every day of this? We have a great place.
I feel a buzz. I mean, I feel like the current council takes some risks, and they're not willing to just to say that, oh, well, Hagerstown's always done it this way. So I feel great about the staff that we have at the city and the current council, and I feel like that there's a lot of great individuals, you included, that really promote the goodness that we do have. And I feel like that's going to eventually, when the International Film Festival comes and the bike races, and people love this community whenever they visit. It's beautiful, and we have a lot to offer.
Yeah, by the way, the city park needs to be added to our list, and I know it's
yes.
forgotten about only because it's been here forever, like the museum. But wow, is there any better city park anywhere that you can see?
It's beautiful.
Henry.
Future opportunities for our community. What do you see in the immediate horizon for what we can do, how we can be better?
It's really about just spreading the good news. It's really, taking that tough conversation and not necessarily trying to say, someone's opinion, but just patience. I think that we all need patience because we're in this world now where we want instant gratification, and it's easy to say, like, wow, why can't we get a brewery, or why can't we get a restaurant down here, and why can't we have, all of the homeless, all of it gone? But I just think that it takes time. I think that we need more patience.
We have, in my view, a new generation of young people graduating from BISFA, graduating from USMH, young business people that are moving into business locations downtown that I think are really going to help us increase the foot traffic. And I know Bob Brucci likes to talk about that all the time. But I think, and I agree with you, I think it's going to take a while, but I think we're on the right path.
I do too.
I think we are on track. To be something very, very make Hagerstown great again, Ron.
I do. I think that it's really just this next generation. That's what they expect. They expect things to do and restaurants and such. And I think that they're going to be the reason. Again, the Youth Advisory Council. They're going to be the reason that we are able to move forward.
The Urban Partners Plan. You're probably familiar with that. That's several things has been born. Is there another phased urban partner that you would like to see implemented?
I think that it needs to be revisited. I think that, I don't know how long the Urban Partners Plan.
It's been several years.
Yeah.
It brought on, housing for the USMH. It's brought on a lot of different things with BISFA, with the Maryland Theater. The Stoop has come into it. But what do you actually see as you branch out from just downtown? Or do you want to build that downtown with this multi-purpose complex and use the existing stadium for some other things that still utilize its space and use the water?
I think that, Kristen's concept of an indoor sports complex, I think that youth sports is where it's at. I think that it is a great concept.
What do you think that would do for this community to see people coming from Montgomery County to Hagerstown to do? Gosh, you've done it for how many years?
Well, we won't talk about that on air.
Yeah, I think youth sports, and if you talk about, the baseball and all of that kind of thing that, kids don't usually, when you talk about baseball, they don't go into baseball as much anymore. You know what I mean? Because it's a concentrated sport and it's just not how they operate any longer. But parents insist that their kids get involved in youth sports. They don't have a choice when they're younger. So why don't we capitalize on that, right?
Last question. Obviously, Blues Fest is kind of it no longer exists, but I knew there's a new replacement. I'll be honest, and I worked on the Blues Fest committee for a dozen or more years, but August-Toberfest is actually my favorite.
It's a fun event.
What is the future of August-Toberfest? Are we feeling like that will continue into the foreseeable future?
I don't see that going away.
Okay.
Not on my, I would not vote for it to go away. I love it.
Shelley, thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
Obviously, I know you said you have a lot of reading to do. Obviously, you've done a lot of reading.
Oh,
so,
thanks.
Thank you for being with us. We hope you will join us again maybe in a year or so, just to give us another update. Welcome to Fast Five, where our three panelists talk about 5 topics in 7 short minutes. Let's start it off. John Delaney, our former congressman from the 6th District, was picked to be in the first Democratic debate. Ron, what say you?
Well, they picked the people that were over 2% and under 2%, and he was in one of those categories. So now he's going to be on first on the 26th of June. Anxious to hear what he has to say, but also like who he's there with. He's got some, he's there with Cory Booker, Castro, the mayor of New York, and Elizabeth Warren, and the O'Rourke guy from Texas.
Now, did they? I mean, the over 2%, under 2%. Did they? Was there any other?
That was it.
That was it. Okay.
Well, I thought it was they either had to be X percentage points in the polls or raise X number of dollars by X thousand contributors over.
Yeah.
Well, what I had read is the news network randomly divided candidates polling above and below 2% on the 2 nights, and that's how they divided.
But to qualify, the qualifier was, so much money,
or so many points,
or so many points on the polls. And I think it's great that John Delaney's going to be there. He might be able to wipe the floor up with several of the high-profile candidates because John's very articulate, and he has a firm grasp of the issues. And if there's any Democrat candidate that could defeat Trump, and I'm sorry for my Republican brethren out here, John Delaney, I think, has that ability.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that he is a centrist. Mm-hmm. I think that he's willing to look at both sides of the issue, and as our previous guest, Shelley McIntyre, suggested, I think he's willing to vote his conscience and his values, not what he thinks is going to get him reelected.
Yep.
My opinion.
It's a good opinion.
All right. Zoning variances could allow new homes at Fort Ritchie. So, Ron, that's a hurdle, albeit potentially a small hurdle, but it adjusts the size of the lot that you have to have and the offset from the setback. What are your thoughts on that?
It's only one street. I would have rather seen a comprehensive approach to a much bigger area. It's only 6 acres.
Okay.
And they're going from 100-foot front down to 20 feet front. They're going from, and it's all setbacks. It deals with setbacks.
Right. And setbacks is the amount of open space between the front of your home and the road, correct?
Setbacks can be setback from your park area, from your parking places, from another, another facility.
And they did change the parking requirements
yes,
as well.
They did change the parking, but I just don't think that I know the street. When you come in the main part at Fort Ritchie and you turn right inside the gate, go down by Lake Royer, up Lake Royer Road. It's right behind Lake Royer. It's only one street. It comes to a dead end. They're going to make it a cul-de-sac. There's like 18 to 20 houses there now. They're going to 36, which is a good thing. But overall, there was several proposals for a massive area for housing. I think that should be a type of a gated community that doesn't have to meet the setbacks and things as properties do when there isn't a gated community. If you go into your gated communities, look, they're right on top of each other.
Right.
They're really designed different. And and again, all they're going to do in the next year is what? What they're famous for. They're going to tear down, and they're going to talk and tear down. They become demolition experts. They're not construction experts.
They're demolition
experts.
Henry, what's your opinion?
I mean, I've heard some of the concerns from the local community saying, oh, well, what about, our infrastructure here? How do we sustain it, et cetera? There's going to be development at Fort Ritchie. Now, whether it happens in our lifetime or the lifetime of our children is a different story because, like Ron said, we've been famous at hurrying up and doing nothing. I think it's positive that there's something. Now, are we going about piecemeal? Possibly. Okay, I think your point's valid, Ron. But maybe it's part of we're getting something going, and let's look at a more comprehensive plan for the development for the Korean investors that are undergoing this.
Yes, and they wanted 36,000 square feet per lot. Well, that's been taken back to 2,000 square feet per lot. And there's supposed to be 25 townhomes also. So it's, and the parking places can be, the narrower the lot, the less parking you're going to have.
There was concern about if somebody has a party, would there be sufficient parking?
I agree with you. The same thing comes up all the time. At one time, there was 5,000 people that worked up there, and they always talk about traffic. At one time, you had all those people up there, and Cascade School could help. Now you're going to build...
Well, but also they went to Smithsburg, the Smithsburg school system.
No, not the elementary school.
Not the elementary system, but
the elementary school. But, so you're building so insignificant of houses, it's probably going to attract elderly people or maybe people that wanted just a time for the summer or the winter. Yeah. And you've got the naysayers up in the area, and you'll never overcome what they have to say.
All right, Jamison Dorr CEO named to the University of Maryland Medical Systems Board. We know that the UMMS has been under fire for inside dealing, including the former mayor of Baltimore, Mrs. Pugh. And what do we think about that, Henry?
Well, I think it's a good appointment, solid member. Maybe USMH is going to start installing Jamison doors in all their facilities. I'm merely joking about that. I think it's a compliment to what he has done and within our community. But the bottom line is they had to essentially empty the house in order to bring.
Well, it's not emptied yet. There's people are calling for more draining of the swamp.
Draining of the college swamp, yes.
Ron, John from Jamison. What are your thoughts on this?
When I initially saw the article, I didn't like it because it had him breaking ground for a facility over in the Greencastle area. Then I look at the Herald Mail and I look where the publisher of the Herald Mail lives. And I'm thinking, why did they do that? Why was it necessary to point John Williams out because he doesn't live here, or he maybe live here, but he was building a facility out. John Williams, one of the most professional individuals I've ever met in my entire career. He runs the Jamison, door in an extremely efficient manner. He's well respected in Annapolis. He's well respected by Governor Hogan, and it wasn't something that he went after to do. They're looking at his experience from the perspective of a major employer. And I think he will bring a lot to the table, but I didn't like the way it came out. Sometimes the way the newspaper puts stories together, I just wonder.
You, however, think that John is a solid appointment.
Couldn't be a more solid appointment anywhere in the state of Maryland.
Okay, very good. Cummings cries contempt for William Barr and Wilbur Ross over citizenship question on the upcoming census. Henry, what say you?
Well, let's see. The purpose of the census is to count the citizens of this country in order to determine the right of proportions of shares of votes within this country, correct?
That's one of the reasons.
Okay,
yes.
That's one of the reasons. Well, wouldn't it be ideal to be able to determine whether they are a citizen or they're just visiting this country and don't have the right or privilege to vote?
Ron?
A little bit different take on it. I go back to what we did on redistricting. When they said that redistricting was flawed, they wanted to redistrict, so it wasn't done right. They didn't want Montgomery County, but let's take it over to Carroll County. So let's go from one extreme to another extreme. And here, all this is going to do is help Republican and in my opinion, and non-Hispanic whites. That's what it's all meant to do for the purpose of.
But we're providing education, even if they're not a citizen in this country. We're providing opportunities for education for them to go into our public school system. We're providing opportunities potentially for them to hold jobs down in the community. So if there's a citizenship question for the people who are eligible to vote, but we're still taking in consideration that these people didn't check the box, but they still live in the community, we can address two issues. One, making sure that we have resources for them within our community, but two, making sure that the resources are allocated based upon the citizens within the community to have the proper representation.
And you know what the bottom line is to pick and choose and find who's here that's illegal, like the DACA program, where you find out who they are, and then you go out, and whether it's starting next week to remove 1 million a week.
And has that happened?
So it's going to start next week.
Oh, it's going to start always next week. But at the same point, we have people who are not citizens of this country receiving educational opportunities under the University of Maryland program at in-state tuition prices, and we're not sending people knocking on the doors, gathering them up.
No, we're not in Maryland.
Ron, would you agree that Elijah Cummings has been on the opposite side of almost every Republican position ever taken?
He's got an obligation in the oversight of by the Constitution of the oversight of the White House. He's doing his job. Do I agree with him? The election will sort a lot of this out. Yeah. But after when the day's over, what Ross and your other gentleman did is not. I don't agree with it. They don't want to follow what the Constitution of the country calls for.
Well, I think Mr. Cummings is voting based on what he thinks will get him reloelected, not what is right for the country.
Do you think he cares about being reelected?
Do you think he has a challenge for reelection?
Yes, come on, Jim.
Look at his political district. He doesn't have a challenge for reelection.
All right.
His biggest fight in life now is what?
Keeping his wife out of jail.
All right. President Trump has proposed a new paint job for Air Force One. But oh wait, says the Congress, we want oversight on that one. Is this an example of not seeing the forest through the trees? Don't we have more important things to deal with than whether the...
from whose perspective?
From anybody's.
Are you saying the paint?
Tell me that should be on the top 500 list of the things that we should deal with in this country.
Why don't you ask me if I agree with it?
Do you agree with it?
No, I think it should be painted. I don't have any problem with it being repainted. But I think it's time to rebrand it.
There you go.
Wow. Okay.
Make Air Force One great again.
Yeah. I mean, maybe what we can do is we can do a wrap on the limo, the presidential limo, slam it down, and he can have air shocks. He can bounce up and down on it.
Because maybe in a couple of years it'll just read TRUMP.
So seriously, I was gearing up for a fight on this one with you.
I have no problem with that being rebranded. I have no problems with
Henry,
certain things
what say
being
you?
But my
rebranded.
question is, why, as you said, why is this even on the radar screen?
Because
this does not
we
impact the
focus on
country.
minutia.
Okay, this doesn't impact the country.
It's something else to argue about.
And you know, one of the congressmen that was quoted in there, it's going to add to the weight of the plane.
The opposition party, and I don't care whether it's Republican or Democrat, you can always count on them to be crisis creators. And in this case, it's a Democrat because there's a
So
Republican.
why don't you just go about it, put it in and do it instead
There's
of
a
somebody.
Republican in the White House, and I will tell you, in all fairness, that when Barack Obama was in the White House, the crisis creators were, guess who? The Republicans.
What if he wanted to repaint the Air Force One?
Then the Republicans would have equally stood up. I'm not
So
arguing.
I rest my case, but I still think it should be done.
I do too.
In the beginning, there was dial-up. Slow as syrup dial-up. When 3 megabits arrived, it felt like riding a cyclone with your hands in the air. Until 100 megabits sent you surfing with glee on a cavernous pipeline of bits and bytes. Which brings us to 1 gig. That's 1,000 megabits per second from Antietam Broadband. We're about to break the internet speed barrier. Washington County deserves the fastest internet. Get Flight Gigabit today from Antietam. Internet redefined.
Welcome to Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down, where our panelists get to talk about their favorite or least favorite things of the week. Ron, what say you?
I'm going to give a thumbs down this week. A lot of times I don't, but this week I'm emphatic with the Chamber of Commerce under leadership of Paul Fry, the Greater Hagerstown Committee under leadership of Jim Kirchhoff, and Chief, Washington County Industrial Foundation under the leadership of Greg Snook, of the group that's together forming the Economic Development Coalition. It's all being done in secret, and it's not out for people to see what's going on, as many of those organizations, the things that happen are done in secret. The last thing we need is an Economic Development Coalition in Hagerstown, Washington County, and all other 8 incorporated municipalities that's not put together by the citizens of the entire county.
Are the chamber, chief, and are those groups that are controlling that it's done in secret, or is that the county?
County don't have anything in it. Those groups are what's doing. County don't have an Economic Development Commission anymore. Those groups are doing. Where do you find out where they want to put it?
Okay.
Okay, I just totally disagree with what those 3 organizations, and they're not the only 3 that's involved in it, but they're the ones driving the truck, and I think it's wrong.
All right. Henry?
Okay, and this is not a commercial because they don't sponsor the show or whatever. Finally, the debate of which donut's going to be better is going to be answered early next week. Okay? Our local Crumpies, that is a hallmark of our county, is getting competition from Krispy Kreme, that's going to be opening on the Dole Highway.
Krispy Kreme going to lose.
Okay? Listen, I've had both fresh, but I've never been able to do it side by side. I'm a local boy. I'm going to trust in Crumpies. Actually, the challenge would be pick up your Crumpies and take it to Krispy Kreme. Okay, so as they're coming off hot off the line, you can compare. I got a feeling you're going to be pleasantly surprised how good Crumpies donuts really are.
Very good, thank you. I also just have a thumbs down this week, and that is for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's remark comparing our border-based facilities that house illegal immigrants that come across to concentration camps. And she suggests that the fact that it's concentration camps has nothing to do with the fact that the people were put to death there. And that may or may not be true. There may have been, yes, I know there were death camps as well. But I think there are many differences. And I think her remarks were, well, I started with ill-advised, but I'm just going to say plain stupid. And I think she's stuck on stupid. So I hope that she considers that she's gotten a lot of bad press. I know that some of the New York newspapers and others have reached out and made comments, but I think that's a ridiculous comparison to make, and I think it's wrong.